I know you were a part of animals when you were a kid,
Yeah.
but like, let's talk about like when real life hit you, you know, like 18 years old, like what were you doing for work? Were you already working with animals for a living? Like, what were you doing?
No, I went to school at UNT for a little while. I was actually an architect major, and then I was doing a lot of drafting stuff. And then I went to the Art Institute of Dallas, and then to UNT, and ended up, meeting a girl and having kids and starting a family early. And
respect.
So that ended. My ex-wife is no longer in the picture there, but my kids are. They're my heart and soul. So and then Lori is the one who runs the show. She's the love of my life. So
there you go.
Love it. Man, I started picking up on little things. Started picking up some dragons here and there. Started getting back into it after college and stuff. And I was working and just the normal everyday hustle. Working my ass off. And then actually my daughter. I have twin daughters. They're 18 now, but I believe Haley was 5 or 6 years old, maybe, and she got a leopard gecko as a pet.
Okay.
We went to pick up some redfoot tortoises for my wife Lori, and she used her allowance money because she had a little bit of allowance money. Picked up a little leopard gecko, and my wife fell in love with them. And I'd come home from work, and she goes, "Hey, we're going to look at this collection." I'm like, "What the fuck?" So that's what started me as far as breeding and vending shows. I was doing leopard geckos, and at one point we were producing nearly 1,000 leopard geckos a year. But we're not producing pet grade stuff. We were working on high-end genetics and working with some of the top breeders and getting really cool projects and lines going and stuff like that. So then I was doing bearded dragons and chameleons and hognose and all that stuff. And it's like, I mean, everybody knows how many. If you have that kind of collection, it's like having a full-time job anyway.
No, for real. So and what's okay? So you're saying that's kind of what got you started, right there, is when you started breeding those bearded dragons or leopard geckos.
Leopard geckos was what we started with, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And that was the biggest part of our collection. So we started vending these shows, local shows. We were traveling, doing some shows. I was working second shift and get home at night, pack geckos, leave at 4 a.m, drive 4 hours to a show, set up, work the whole show the whole day. Like, it was crazy, But there was definitely an issue with some show promoters that just didn't give a shit, or they didn't have the power. The people who were working for those shows didn't have the power to change anything. So we wanted to do something different, honestly. And we wanted to look at it from a vendor's perspective and make sure that the vendors were taken care of and we had the right kind of vendors and the right kind of quality and go from there,
How far back do you remember going to a show? Do you remember, like, can you think in your head, like, how small you were when you went to a show?
Honestly, it wasn't until I was probably my early 20s that I ever went to a show. We had a little pet shop in my hometown that we used to go and, like, sell rough earth snakes to as feeders. We'd go catch rough earth snakes and sell them for $1 to the guy. And I remember one time looking at a book. He had a breeder book, and it was all black and white. It was just a list. It was probably from, like, Crutchfield or somebody, honestly, back then. But there was one color picture in that whole book, and it was a rainbow boa. It was a common rainbow boa baby. It was like $2,500 at that point. Wow. And I was like, holy shit, I'm going to own some of those. And I did, and I don't want to own anymore. I'm not a fan of rainbow boas. Everybody can have the rainbow boas, but they were my thing. But I mean, that's what growing up in South Texas, that stuff's around you all the time. You know what I'm saying? We caught stupid shit. We were out catching copperheads and stuff like idiots, and rattlesnakes and coral snakes and holding them like corn snakes and shit. So I always had that love and affinity for reptiles and stuff like that. So, and any animal, honestly, I'm just an animal lover, period. So
now let me ask you this. I mean, I know you got into the leopard geckos, but like, kind of let's talk about what it is that you keep now, or what it is, or what, like, what led after the bearded dragons and like the leopard geckos. Did you ever get into snakes? Like, do you have certain snakes that you keep and like to work with or anything like that?
I liked working with the hognose. I love the hognose. And I did that for a little bit. As far as right now, I a blackhead python.
Wow.
My daughter has a couple of ball pythons and a sambo, and she's got a palmetto corn. Hannah is one of my other daughters. I have Haley and Hannah, but Hannah is actually the snake person. She takes care of all the snakes and stuff, so she loves that. But yeah, I never got into breeding any snakes or anything like that. I never did that. I was more of the gecko, and now I'm really into baryonids and monitors, things like that. So
Let's talk about your I'm so sorry, the twins, the daughters. What was it? Their names again?
Hannah and Haley.
Hannah and Haley. Okay, so raising kids, right? Like obviously at that point when you're raising them, you were doing like animals full time. Like you were around they were raised around animals, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, and my son is 23. I'm actually in his room because my wife's watching the Cowboys game, and we're in the hotel, but she's screaming at the TV about the Cowboys game. So yeah, so they've been raised in it. My son actually came on full time with us earlier this year. He's actually working with us, and my daughters stay at home now and take care of the animals when we're on the road. So okay, but yeah, they grew up in it. They can probably tell you. Hannah knows more about snake genetics and ball pythons than I have ever even have learned. She's really good at it.
Now,
Haley's more of the mammal person.
Okay. Okay. So I was going to ask you, like, as far as like, how did you determine which one's more invested than the other? You know what I mean? Like, was it just something that you were able to like find out as they were getting older, or did you know right away one was going to be more of the reptile person than the other, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, well, it's funny because Haley's the one that picked out the leopard gecko and went with the first reptile. And now she likes the reptiles and she takes care of them. She's great, but awesome. It's just kind of how they've evolved, Hannah also was into ornithology and now she's into marine biology. So she's been more of the animal lover and kind of pushing that boundary, as far as what she wants to keep and knowing what she wants to do. But I've never really pushed them into doing anything. It's up to them what they want to do,
But like, for instance, you're at the hotel right now and you have your whole family with you. Like they're all there to support and try to help you out with running the show, or how much of the family actually helps you run the show and whatnot?
It depends on the show. Like the girls right now, Hannah and Haley are back at the house. They're taking care of the house. My son's here with me. Right. He helps me with the shows and setups and taking care of vendors during the shows and things like that. So, but they alternate. Sometimes one of the girls will come. Most of the vendors know all my kids. I mean, we know most of the vendors' kids. We've seen them grow up. So we run a pretty tight ship. Everybody's pretty, really, really close.
So last show I had my boy Rami from the Reptile Super Show. I don't know if you know who Rami is, man.
Yep,
but
I've actually been out to Pomona and met Rami. Yep.
Oh, respect. And I had such a curious question the whole time talking to him, man. And I'm just curious, like, as far as like what are the first things, what was the first thing you did when that crossed your mind that you wanted to throw a show? Like, what was like the next step? Like after you personally convinced yourself you wanted to throw a show?
Wow, that's a tough one. Basically just started researching and talking to my vendors that I'd been vending next to. I'd been vending with those guys for years. Started kind of throwing ideas around and then looking for venues and seeing if it was even feasible and looking at budgeting, and budgeting was almost nothing then. And I had a business partner at the time and he was in the Houston area. So that's where I'm from originally, but I was living in Dallas, but I was working, stupid hours at my job. So he was kind of being the legs for me. And we kind of we went in together. I mean, I think his mom actually like loaned us the deposit check. No shit, just to get it. Because I was working and we were putting everything we had into it. We had barely any budget. The venue's super expensive. We had to rent tables. Like we learned a lot the first year before we put the show on. Then we put the show on and it was like a relief because it was actually a pretty decent show. Most people will say it was one of the best ones, but when we look back on it now, it was small fries compared to what we are now, So looking back at all the mistakes that we made has helped us get to where we're at right now. And then after that second show, the second show we did in Austin, it was just my wife and I, Lori, that doing it. And then she quit her job about 3 years ago to do this full time too. So,
respect to that.
Yeah,
man. I mean, I know I could use my wife's help, but she makes a pretty good check. So I'm like, fuck, I'm not ready to. I can't get her yet.
No, my wife was the VP of a medical recruiting company.
Jesus.
But she worked from home, so she worked on the side with me to help me, do this. I had another back surgery. I had 2 back surgeries that kind of prevented me going back to work where I was.
Thank you for watching this week's Trap Talk with MJ podcast clip. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. That way you're on top of every single Trap Talk clip that's released here every week, and that way you're on top of every single podcast that comes out every Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday here on the Trap Talk with MJ YouTube channel, where we bring all the hottest up-and-coming reptile keepers and all the most experienced, hottest reptile keepers in the reptile game. We will see you here next week with another Trap Talk clip, and we're out. Cheers!